The reason we had to have a social structure category in this contemporary world is because the modern world system, anchored in capitalism and patriarchy and this kind of violence-based thing, white supremacy, the concept of white supremacy, and not supreme, the concept of whiteness, that is the contemporary world system. One of the things that it did, however, is put all of humanity in communication, almost all of humanity in communication with each other. That is a contribution, because what then you do when you put people from all over this ball in communication with each other, you can see people's similarities and differences. That's the thing we're piecing together. Arguably, where we are now in the human experience was predictable once you put everybody together. In other words, there was a moment when the people that did it were able to manage this, but they were never ever quite able to manage it because it's people. But now the thing is coming apart in terms of their best laid plans of how to manage. The question is, how are we going to manage from now on as we continue to build? Now, so we needed a social structure category because we live in a world where the concept of who we are is always mediated through other people. So just like Yvette Nicole Brown and Keke Palmer there, even though they trusted themselves, certainly Keke did, Yvette Nicole Brown in a moment had to deal with this external social structure she lived in, even so much as you say, I may doubt myself or I may hesitate for a moment. I think about Amiri Baraka in 1972 at Gary, Indiana, the National Black Political Convention, where he's quoting W.B. Du Bois on double consciousness. And he says, Du Bois is really talking about a ghost, this white ghost in your head, always telling you what to do, what you're telling to do, but the ghost is the ghost. Baraka in his beautifully creative way, saying, stop listening to the ghosts. You know what I'm saying? So Yvette Nicole, maybe that's the ghost. And I don't know. Anyway, back to Dawson and Thompson, haven't really left. The governance category is created because that asks the question, how did or do African people in the moment we're studying, in this case, this text, how do we interact with each other? The reason we needed a social structure category was prompted by the necessity of what has happened over the last 500 years. We got to turn that noise down for these external things, this ghost conversation. But we must also recognize we live in this social structure, to going back to something we talked about in the first 10 minutes. So we don't ignore it. You can't ignore it. It may cost you your life, but you must not allow it to shape what you also know, what you know first, which is how we relate to each other. Now, the further reason we need a social structure category is because human beings have always created social structures. The difference between the last several centuries and before is that the social structures we created, which are usually basically how do you manage the affairs of human beings living together and managing together. So rules, what are the protocols? What are all these things that are going on? Those are social structures. Humans have always had social structures. The way that Kemet, that the Nile Valley societies organized themselves over thousands of years, that's a social structure. The Parawa, the Pharaoh, the nomes or the Sepet, the districts. How do you manage? How do you come together? How do you do the great works? Okay, we can't farm right now. So this is between after the harvest and before the planting. So we'll take these 3 months before the Nile floods and after it recedes, we'll take those 3 months. And that's when we'll do the public works project to put the farmers to work so they have something to do and they eat. That's the pyramids. So slaves built the pyramids. Stop. You should go over there with those people that say black people sold black people in slavery, and we'll give you a book list, and y'all come on in here. We can have a conversation. But right now, you're speaking authoritatively, which means you probably don't know enough about it. At least you ain't Ben Carson to say that they had grain in the pyramids, and that's just unforgivable. I think at that point, you're just being deceitful, because I don't want to put you in the category with Herschel Walker and say you got brain damage, because you worked on brains. So we're going to, maybe give you a little bit of a pass. Plus, you're an elder. There's a protocol to that in the governance structure. So the governance category, we're asking who we are to each other. That becomes different than the social structure category once we are taken, once the invasions happen. Once the invasions happen with the intent on disrupting whatever was going on in Africa prior to the disruption, this is where black people sold black people in slavery. My thing is, you're absolutely right. Say a little bit more about that. Into what? Into slavery. Where did slavery come from? Well, they were enslaving each other before. Okay, could you be specific? No, you can't. Okay, here go 2 books, and we'll come in, take a couple of weeks, come back, we'll talk some more. And then you see the things start unraveling. But when the boat showed up from Europe, that's a very different concept. So what you then see, all right, let me just get to the point here. When these disruptions, and this is what Howard French is kind of summarizing from previous scholars and then adding his own unique perspective and research in Born in Blackness, you see an interruption in the social structures of West Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, because those invaders, the Portuguese and the Spanish, then the French and the Dutch and the English, what they are doing is injecting their social structures, their cultural meaning making, their movement and memory, their ways of knowing, their governance structures into these African contexts that are very different from each other depending on where you are on the continent, but also share some things that you won't know they share until you pull all those people by the millions into this criminal enterprise called a modern world system.